Hello, everyone. Welcome to my Positive Life Answers podcast. I am your podcast host and self-improvement expert, Dr. Marianne Mercer. And you can call me Dr. Mary, as many people do. I'm a speaker, author, psychologist by training, and an intensive coaching co-creator. I have worked successfully with hundreds of people over the years, and I have a proven track record. I have achieved many things in my life, and I have helped others achieve a lot in their lives. In my life, I have achieved so much despite many obstacles and setbacks, and I share them with you via my story as well as stories of others that I may talk about in this podcast. So welcome to episode 30, Releasing Toxic People and Emotional Vampires Draining Your Life. In my Positive Life Answers podcast, my goal is to help you transform the quality of your life and help you create the life you desire. The goal of this podcast is to help you make improvements and changes in practical and very empowering ways. So let's create the best life ever. If you're new and just discovered me and my podcast, thank you for joining us today. A warm welcome. The new people following this podcast, don't forget to press that follow button to follow and download the podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. And thank you for my loyal listeners who are still with me and supporting my podcast. So please don't keep me a secret and share this podcast with those who you think can really benefit and enjoy these podcast episodes. Let's create a positive domino effect in the people around you and your life. So today, we're going to talk about releasing toxic people and emotional vampires from your life. In recent emails from my listeners and my work over the years with my intensive coaching clients using my patented system, I see time and time again that when they're making improvements or even slight changes in your life, they observe that their relationships also become affected. It's like a domino effect. Sometimes it's a good thing to happen, and other times it's a sad but true occurrence. Have you ever felt drained after being in the presence of a friend or relative? And unfortunately, that sometimes can be our significant others or our partner. So today, you're going to learn about some ways people are toxic and drainers in your life or in your quest to change to make your life and your best life ever. Why you need to take inventory of your relationships right now. At what point and when do you need to let go? Ways to disconnect from toxic people, and then how to fill that new void in your life with supportive and really healthy people, and along with a motivational I have for you today. So let's get started. That's what we're going to cover. Sounds like a lot, but it'll be really easy. So why in the world am I bringing up this topic? Well, because a lot of people experience it when they're trying to make improvements in their lives. Their eyes open and they start discovering things. So why disconnect? Disconnect from toxic people? Well, overall, to become less stressed, happier, more confident, you need to avoid what I called emotional vampires many years ago in my book with my co-author, Dr. Michael Mercer, called Spontaneous Optimism. Unhappy people allow emotional vampires to suck the positive feelings and emotions right out of their bodies. And generally, emotional vampires include people who put you down, can subtly criticize you or sabotage your dreams and aspirations by interfering in a lot of different subtle ways, and we'll talk about that. Never let negative people shoot a hole in your boat, especially in making changes and improvements in your life. These types of people will drain the life out of you. Some people say, well, Dr. Mary, at what point do I let go of an emotional vampire? My answer is when they start leaving you feel drained after being around them, when they make you feel tired after being in their presence. If some of these toxic traits are tricky to spot in other people, then it might be helpful to consider one last symptom, how toxic people make you feel. So toxic people make you feel drained and diminished. You have less physical energy or emotional energy after spending time with them, and not more. Friends should lift you up and be like pillars, holding you up when times get rough or you're making big improvements or just even little changes. They also have an effect on your sense of self-esteem. They leave you feeling unconfident, unappreciated. So that's really important to understand. Toxic people leave you with a vague feeling of ick or yucky. A lot of people say this person just left me feeling icky. It's like you've been contaminated by their negative presence. In fact, that icky feeling, that ick feeling we call it, can manifest as a feeling such as being frustrated and uncomfortable. And it's sometimes one of these clear indicators that you're in the presence of an unsupportive person. You need to pay attention with that. Checking in with your subjective experience, meaning your feelings and reactions, is extremely helpful because these visceral responses are really meaningful. So remember, if you've been with somebody and you feel yucky, you need to pay attention because the body holds a lot of information and you need to listen to your intuition. Okay, so how do you recognize toxic behaviors? Well, I started to describe some of them, but if you're interacting with a person with toxic, draining behaviors, you may feel confused and unsure of yourself after being around them. You leave the situation feeling a little bit drained. You feel bad about yourself in some way. You still feel kind of sucked in and want to help them, but don't understand the reason why you would want to do that. You notice your boundaries aren't being respected, and you feel guilty saying no, that you can't get together with them because you're setting some boundaries. People who tend to have toxic behaviors are not very easy to spot sometimes, but if you think about these signals, it'll help you, and especially in noting how they make you feel. The other sign I want to just bring up briefly is drama. Drama may follow them everywhere they go in their life, and they may seem to have a life that's kind of like a soap opera. There's always something going on, and there's always some crisis. And let me summarize all this into the types of emotional vampires that I've discovered in my work as a psychologist, as an intensive coaching co-creator, and experience over the years. Vampire number one, I call the narcissist. And what does that mean? Vampire number one is a very self-centered person. Their model is me first and nobody else. Everything's always about them. They have a grandiose sense of importance and entitlement. They hog the attention away from you, and they crave people to pay attention. They are dangerous because they don't have any empathy, and they have a limited capacity for any unconditional love like you would like from a friend. If you don't do things their way, they become pretty cold and withholding. So how do you protect your emotions? Keep your expectation realistic, and remember these are emotionally limited people. Try not to fall in love with one or expect them to be there for you and to love you without strings being attached. Never make your self-worth dependent on them or confine your feelings to them, because they won't even pay attention to that. And this is a hard truth to accept for a lot of people. So it's better not to get sucked into their need to stroke their egos if the relationship is unavoidable. Use some of the strategies we're going to talk about, and I have already said. Keep your expectations realistic. I'm going to give a personal example of an emotional vampire, narcissistic, self-centered type person. In my last book, Bouncing Back from Difficult Times, that I wrote during experiences I had with people all over the country during my Zoom meetings during the pandemic and lockdown, I wrote this book. I wrote this book about my life and also about the experiences I had with others. Boiled it down to how people can bounce back from challenges or setbacks, but I called it Bouncing Back from Difficult Times. I shared that with a new friend that I made in the neighborhood, and I showed her the book. I talked about the concept. I was really excited to share it. It was one of the first people I shared it with. And she just looked at me and said, I should write a book about my life. That would be really fascinating to people. And then she went on and on about it. Never acknowledged what I said because it was a threat to her. She wanted the attention back to her. It was a great lesson to learn early on in my friendship with her. So I decided to quietly be unavailable for her and to set some distance for her. When I see her in a community, I say hi, but I keep it very limited. So that's my personal example of dealing with a vampire type number one. And vampire type number two, the victim. Vampire number two is a person who displays what we call victim mentality. We touched about victim mentality early on in this series, but it's pretty self-explanatory. These vampires rub on you with their poor me attitude and are not willing to take responsibility for their lives or their action. They just present over and over that everybody's against them, the world's against them, and that is the reason for their unhappiness. When you offer a solution to their problems, they always say, yeah, but. So when somebody says, yeah, but, you know that's a signal they're a victim mentality. You might end up screening your calls to avoid these kind of people. As a friend, you may want to help, but their tales of woe really overwhelm you. They never take your advice. How do you protect your emotions here? Be kind, but set limits. Listen briefly and tell this friend or relative, I really care about you, but I can only listen for a few minutes today if you want to discuss solutions. I'd be thrilled to brainstorm with you. They don't want solutions though, but at least you offer them. They're not in danger of any problems, so you're not responsible for them. Listen to them, sympathize with them, and say to them, I think good thoughts for things to work out. I hope you understand, but I'm on a deadline and I need to get back to work, or I have a commitment tonight, so I'll see you later. Then say, let's talk about it some other time. I am going to meet somebody. I have to go back to work. Whatever it is that feels comfortable for you to help you set the healthy limits. I'll give you another example of that. Some of you heard my story, the Victoria story. Victoria's story talks about all the challenges I had and ways that I overcame them in my life. I mean, when I look at the episode, or listen to the episode, I should say, the episode on creating a happy, optimistic life. I went to college and I went to grad school. I've achieved a lot in my life, and I talked to some friends that were still in the neighborhood that I grew up in. We had a reunion. And I talked about, I graduated from grad school and had my doctorate degree in psychology, and I wrote some books, and just letting them know the answer to the question of what you've been up to. So I told them what I've been up to, and I was proud of it. Some people were really cheerleaders, and I appreciated that. And a couple people, they went into this victim mode. Somebody said to me, well, I could have gone to college if my parents weren't so cheap and uninterested in helping me. That was one of the victim lines. My parents didn't want me to go to college because it was expensive. Well, I put myself through college. Not my parents wanted me to go to college, but financially they couldn't afford it. They had kind of a poverty mentality. I just went into problem-solving mode and figured out ways to pay to go to college. And I took charge of that. This person I just talked about, they just went into victim mode and never, ever made their life more thrilling, successful, and optimistic. They stayed in that victim mode. Vampire number 3, the controller is what I call it. Vampire number 3 is people are kind of control freaks with others. They don't control themselves, but they want to control others. These people obsessively try to control you and dictate what you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to be and feel. They have an opinion about everything. Do you know that kind of person? They'll control you by invalidating your feelings if they don't fit into their expectations or roles. They often start with sentences such as, you know what you need to do? You know what you need? And then they proceed to tell you, even if you don't want to hear about it. You end up feeling kind of put down and dominated. How do you protect yourself around these people that are controllers? The secret to success is to never try to control a controller. It's not going to happen. They have better skills than you do. Be assertive in the way that you're comfortable with, but don't tell them what to do. You can say, I hear your advice, but I really need to work this through on my own or myself. Be confident, be vague. You don't need any other explanation, because if you do, they'll just keep hooking you in. Don't play the victim or sweat the small stuff. Focus on your own issues and leaving that situation. I have an example. And I've had people I've had to let go in my life that just did not support my vision for my life. My example, in another situation, as I became more and more successful, I told a friend that I was to appear on Oprah, the Oprah Winfrey Show, a second time. I got a call back to be an expert on the Oprah Show a second time. So I called them. We'd see them once a week. We even went to exercise classes together. And I told this person, they mumbled, "Oh, that's nice, I guess." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Oh, that's nice, I guess." And they just seemed disinterested. I realized they were controlling and did not want anyone to grow or be more successful or better in their lives at any level than they were. After that, we eventually just stopped being friends. I drifted apart and just let them go. And sometimes it's hard to let people go, especially if they've been in your lives a long time. So do you attract emotional vampires in your life? So emotional vampires or drainers will literally suck and drain your batteries, slow you down, and make you upset. To become happier, optimistic, and energetic, we need to avoid these emotional vampires, and that's what we're talking about. Unhappy people allow emotional vampires to suck all the feelings, all the good feelings right out of their skull, right out of their heart and soul. Emotional vampires include people who will put you down, criticize, mock you, or sabotage your new goals, dreams, and aspirations. So what do you do? Got some of those answers already, but let's boil it down to some facts. Avoid emotional vampires. I want you to take a mental survey of your life by making a list of people and situations you expose yourself to on a regular basis. See what those situations are, and if any of them fit into our 3-prong type of emotional vampires. If they fit the criteria we just reviewed, it's time to make a list of those you will set limits and boundaries on. So if someone in your life, after doing your list, is a controller vampire, a victim vampire, and a self-centered vampire, put a note next to their name. If they fit the criteria we just reviewed, it's time to set some of those limits and boundaries. So discard, get rid of, or if you can't do that because they're family members or people you need to work with, limit your time with them. Limit the situations that keep you from feeling you're living your best life ever. And those people will not cheer you on. So in other words, burn your bridges. You're always told, don't burn bridges. Sometimes a selective few need to go. And you need to burn those bridges. I had to do that. Sometimes, yes, it wasn't easy. People I do in my intensive coaching sessions have to do that. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2 people. Sometimes it's a lot more. So remember, upbeat, happy, optimistic people hang around with cheerleaders, and unhappy people are surrounded by drainers and emotional vampires. So number 2, put some space or distance between you and them. You may want to completely put an end to the relationship. I had to do that with a particular friend. If so, you might just want to go and pull off the Band-Aid approach. This means cutting off the contact with them. If you don't want to get to that extreme, especially if they're coworkers or a family member, just try to put some space between you and them. You may unfollow some people on social media or plan to see them maybe only once or twice a year. If they ask you to spend more time, let them know that you have other plans or commitments and you'll take a rain check. So that leads into the next tip I have, which is set some boundaries. Toxic people have to be met with a powerful force. It's likely that they just won't respond to go away, and they will perhaps even dig their claws in deeper to attach to you and make it difficult to separate. So don't let this discourage you. Be clear about your intentions and maintain the boundaries that you're going to establish. And stick with the boundaries, or toxic people and vampires will use any weakness they sense in you to sneak back in your life. If you told yourself you wouldn't respond to their texts, don't. Block their number, block them on social media, don't send them any emails, don't check in 6 months from now. So let me give you an example. The person I was doing some intensive coaching had a friend that became what I called a telephone terrorist. So in working with this person, I found that there was a friend of hers that was a vampire and was just one of the drama people that we talked about. So another vampire I should add on a list, just thinking about it, is called the drama vampire. So add that on your list. So this person would call her every single morning and every single night. At first, she responded because she thought maybe there was a problem, she was in danger or whatever. But it was just, she called her every morning, called her every night, just to talk about, obsessing about the details of her day, being kind of this victim mentality, that a family member wasn't treating her well. And that interfered with this person's life. So she started to understand that, 2 calls a day is not good. And that was starting to feel drained. So the solution I offered her was cut the cord, cut the telephone cord, kind of ease off in answering them. And maybe in the beginning, you may want to answer them a couple times a week. And then from there, evaluate whether this relationship is helpful. Now, this person told me this drama vampire would be all about herself, and then she'd ask about her and barely gave her any time to respond and just kept focusing back on her. So she was a drama vampire, and can you guess what other kind? Yes, you can. It's the narcissist, the self-centered ones. So see how these examples put these types of vampires in action for you. So the next tip that I think, because of the telephone terrorist drama person, is don't be pulled into their so-called crises. Even if you're standing your ground, toxic people have a way of pulling you back in. Maybe they call you because they're going through a family thing or they need you. But there's a good chance that, like this last vampire calling twice a day, every day, there's a good chance it's just a ploy to get back into your life. While it's going to sting, stay strong and do not fall into this trap. They thrive on making drama in their lives, so it's not your responsibility to fix their lives. So you need to really understand you can be supportive in a relationship that has balance between both of you. But if they're a vampire sucking 95% of the time, all the time, then you need to reevaluate it. And yes, friends go through drama, not drama, but crises. Someone's sick, someone's dying, whatever the problem might be. And yeah, there's times when there is lopsidedness because you're a pillar holding them up and trying to help them. But the people who stay in that 100% of the time are the types I'm talking about. So let me just clarify that, because somebody had asked me about that. When your friend needs you. And however, a vampire does this forever. And it's not your responsibility to always be there for them. So remember that. Give yourself permission. And when you make that decision, that's a powerful tool for yourself. I want you to spend more time with positive people. So we'll talk about that. So how do you cut the cord with these toxic people? So I'm getting rid of these toxic people, emotional vampires in your life. Accept that it might be a process sometimes. Getting rid of a toxic relationship isn't always easy. They won't respect your boundaries. So it's likely they won't respect them later. So you may have to even come back. They even come back, I should say. And you'll have to tell them, this relationship is done. Other ways you might be in touch with them is through technology. So you may want to block them on social media. I did that with a friend that I separated from because of the type of vampire they were. And then don't argue, just reinstate your boundaries. It's tempting to fall into the dynamic of toxicity with these vampires. And, they're going to try to push your buttons. So just fully restate your boundaries. And the communication is that you're trying to debate the person into leaving you alone. This is not a negotiation. So end the conversation. Think to yourself, you're not trying to debate this person. They're stronger than you. They're going to just find that little emotional spot and try to really get in. So just make your decision and stay with your boundaries. You can always just create space instead of separation. And you'll know in your gut, like we talked about before, which people you can, create distance and not separation and just be cordial with, because they don't affect you anymore. And, it's more difficult, of course, with a family member or a significant other. But you can limit how many times you talk to them, how much time you give them if they're draining you. We can do a whole podcast on that one. But let's follow these directions for your vampires right now. And understand that family members, you're not going to separate most likely. I should say you're not going to cut the cord with them most likely. So just create some distance. And I won't lie, cutting the cord with family members can be one of the most challenging things you can do. But as we said, it's also one of the most liberating and life-changing decisions you can ever make. So we'll come back to that another time, because that's a whole new episode. And remember, you can't fix a vampire or toxic person. Make yourself unavailable. Limit your time together. And when you're done with somebody, when it's a total end of a relationship, even with a separation, give yourself some time to recover from releasing toxic people and emotional vampires. Why? Because it's a loss. When I let go of a friend who I knew for many years, who just became more and more controlling, vampire, and self-centered, I had to let go. And yes, it was a loss. It's like breaking up with a spouse. And you don't want to repeat the same experiences while you're still mourning the loss of their relationships. So if you're making improvements and changes in your life via this podcast or another source, a therapist or self-help book, you need to take time to sort out your priority and goals. And it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to be alone for a while. Sometimes it's the most loneliest time for people, when they have to let go people who want support, what they're trying to do to make changes in their lives. So I think the other part of this podcast is just going to be a different podcast, because I want to talk about ways to fill in that void. after you let go of vampires. So, but I think we're just going to put that on hold to next time because it's a whole new podcast itself. So yeah, sometimes you have to adjust as we're going along here. Let me know how this podcast lands with you. It's a very emotional type issue for people. But when you hear that, it's okay to let go people who drain you or just limit your time with them. People get permission that, oh, okay, I'm not making this up. Remember, you're feeling it in your gut. You're getting that yicky feeling, that drained feeling. When you get that, listen to this podcast again. Identify the vampire and what solutions might be good for you. So let me know how this lesson that I am teaching you today really lands with you. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to email me at drmercer@positivelifeanswers.com. That's DRMERCER at positivelifeanswers with an S at the end of answers.com. You can also go to positivelifeanswers.com and go to our contact us form on the website, and I'll respond to your questions and comments. Also, if it's something really powerful, you give me your permission, I'll use the topic in the podcast episode like I did today. So don't forget to go to my website to contact me or to find my free newsletter at positivelifeanswers.com. And also while you're there, you can order our book, Spontaneous Optimism, Bouncing Back from Difficult Times, and many other books. So remember, if you're stuck and need help with emotional vampires and drainers while you're making improvements in your life, contact me about my unique intensive coaching sessions. Email me or go to my website and I will contact you, and I will give you a free 20-minute call to talk with you and answer any of your questions about the intensive coaching sessions that we created. You can also talk with me regarding requests to speak at your organization or conferences. We will be planning next year a weekend retreat. So let me know if you're interested, because that's a way to meet positive people and get support. So let me know if you're ready to take a leap in your path to changing and improving your life. So note to my listeners, this podcast aims to provide useful information to my listeners. It's published with the understanding that your host, Dr. Marianne Mercer, is not engaged in rendering professional services such as counseling, therapy, through the contents and opinions of this podcast. If professional services sought by listeners, such as counseling or therapy or other help, then you're responsible for seeking services of a competent professional, I suggest you contact your local psychological association for a referral, or contact your primary care doctor for a referral in your immediate area. So thank you for listening. Make it a fantastic day. Make it a fantastic week. And I'll see you soon. This is Dr. Mary.